Support WrestleTalk!
Give us a subscribe.
Thank you for being an awesome pledge hammer on Patreon, the Craftsman Blake Carpenter. Hello and welcome to the WrestleTalk Stacked News. I am Chopper P. Quinnell. Give us a like and super kick the subscribe button right in the face. We've got all the biggest talking points from last night's AEW Dynamite and NXT, including both returns and debuts, along with the backstage details behind CM Punk's signing for WWE backstage and how he turned down a huge AEW offer. Click the timestamps in the video description below to jump to any of those right now. But now let's get into the first story, and it appears Jordan Myles, or I guess I should call him ACH now, has quit WWE. His brief time with WWE so far hasn't been overly eventful for ACH, real name Albert Hardy Jr., despite winning the NXT Breakout Tournament. Something never really seemed to click with the Jordan Myles character, and despite a great showing against Adam Cole for the NXT Championship, he was then promptly forgotten about. For a brief recap of the story so far surrounding the controversy, if you didn't know, it was revealed that WWE had originally designed a t-shirt for Jordan Myles in NXT, which evoked strong connotations of racial stereotypes. In response to this, ACH then blasted WWE on Twitter, calling them a racist company and starting a #ForTheCulture movement, which he encouraged other people to get on board with. What followed was a back and forth between WWE and ACH, with WWE claiming ACH had approved the design in the first place, and that the design had been taken down before it was publicly released, so none was sold. ACH claimed that he had only seen the design on a white t-shirt, and had aired his concerns with the design, but they continued ahead regardless, showing an email between he and WWE employee Baker Landon, who he claims lied to his face. So this was already a pretty sticky situation to begin with, but the story had quietly faded from wrestling news headlines until today, when ACH rose back up from the ashes like the sweariest phoenix you've ever met, live streaming the following rant on Twitter.
As of today, I'd like to officially announce that I quit WWE. I am no longer an employee. I refuse to work for racists. I quit. Them. I hate that company and everything they stand for. All they did was ever hold our people back. I do this for the culture. I don't need anyone's permission to do what I want to do. Screw Jordan Myles. Don't ever call me by that slave name. Call me ACH, and don't forget the super. I quit. You.
So I'm not sure if that was clear or not, but I think he just quit WWE. His reasons for leaving aside, this raises a rather curious question. Will WWE actually release him from his contract? WWE have been refusing release requests left, right, and center, with reports circling the Revival, Micah Maria Kanellis, Luke Harper, and Sin Cara, the latter of whom only requested his release on Twitter on Monday, with no response currently. Given the quite frankly horrible press this is giving WWE, you'd think they'd want to quell this as soon as possible, through whatever means that may be. If they refuse ACH's request release, could he then kick up even more of a stink and give them even worse press? But if they release him, he could also then be free to say whatever he wants about the company, not that he's exactly shied away from doing that anyway. This is a very delicate situation, and one that absolutely must be handled with care on both sides. WWE hasn't responded as of the time of recording, but ACH will have to get a response of some kind if he truly wants to leave the company and leave them behind for pastures new. Where do you think ACH and WWE should go from here? Let me know in the comments, because I'll be replying to people for the first 15 minutes after this video goes live. But let's talk about something a bit nicer, shall we? Let's talk about CM Punk some more.
CM Punk return confirmed.
As Ollie so eloquently put it, CM Punk returned to a sort of WWE show this week, appearing on WWE Backstage. He'll be a contributor to the show and part of its rotating cast. While people were very quick to assume this meant an in-ring return to WWE was inevitable, there might be some new information that might put a stop to that. Despite what has been said in the media about Punk never receiving an official offer from AEW, as reported by Brian Alvarez on Wrestling Observer Live, he did in fact have meetings with AEW President and CEO Tony Khan, who supposedly offered him a lot of money to appear for AEW. With Punk turning down this offer and instead accepting a position on WWE backstage, one has to wonder whether this means he truly doesn't want to wrestle again. You'd think that if Punk did want to make an in-ring return, he would have done so in AEW. But with him appearing for WWE backstage, perhaps he just wants to provide some commentary and not get physical. It's also worth noting that CM Punk is employed by Fox and not by WWE, though WWE did give their blessing for the hire. Whether this leads to future talks with WWE themselves remains to be seen, but we've seen what can happen when someone works with a WWE adjacent company such as Sting and Goldberg working with 2K on the WWE video games. It hasn't taken long for people to throw their name in the hat to face Punk, including Seth Rollins, Bray Wyatt, and Ricochet, all of which I would really like to see. Rollins tweeted out a simple "Fight me, CM Punk," to which the WWE on Fox Twitter account responded saying maybe they should talk it out on WWE backstage, to which Seth then responded, "Glad to do it. Book me a flight." Can't you afford your own flight, Seth? What happened to your massive bank account? With Survivor Series taking place in Chicago this year, people have thrown out speculation that he could return to WWE themselves at the show, which then begs the question, why bring him back on backstage first and ruin one of the biggest pops that could have existed in wrestling? Period. With Punk now back under the WWE umbrella, one has to wonder what this means for his UFC status. As reported by Fightful, since he's employed by Fox and not WWE, he remains in the USADA drug testing pool and is open to a UFC return if he so wishes. It's just a question of if he wishes to, and with 2 losses in UFC in as many fights, he may choose to simply provide some commentary on WWE's product instead. It seems the return wasn't very well received by everyone though, with many fans now labeling him a sellout, considering he left under not the best circumstances and has since fought a legal battle against WWE Dr. Chris Amann, a case that has plagued him and led to Punk losing close friend Colt Cabana after the two fell out regarding the case. You can see why some people were up in arms about this decision. Some tweets about him included choice words such as "he came crawling back to Vince" and "you sold out to the most soul-sucking company in the entire world" and "way to sell out on your morals that you stood up for when you left." But Punk's return, among other things, may be one of the reasons that WWE Backstage's viewership increased this week, and dramatically so, jumping from 49,000 viewers to 100,000 viewers this week. While this is a massive increase, it's still not the best viewership number. However, with CM Punk returning at the end of the episode, and with him slated to return next week, we'll have to see how those numbers change. They'll probably go up quite a bit. Interestingly enough, regarding Punk's return, PW Insider are reporting that nobody except Renee Young knew that Punk was even returning. I guess the production crew knew as well, but even so, the fact that the news was not spread like wildfire and leaked in advance in today's wrestling internet climate is actually kind of impressive. If this is true, Paige's "oh wow" and Booker T's "I knew it" reactions were actually legitimate, which I can't tell if that makes it better or worse. But what do you guys think? Do you think CM Punk should have gone to WWE or AEW? Vote by clicking the question on a poll match, also known as the eye above my head. But now it's time for the weekly roundup of AEW Dynamite and NXT headlines, reviews, news, matches, returns. I still haven't come up with a better name yet. First up is AEW Dynamite, so if you want to avoid AEW spoilers but want to hear about NXT, then press the timestamps in the description below right now. AEW spoilers galore. Oh lord, they coming. So, AEW Dynamite this week. After an astoundingly good AEW Full Gear show, how did Dynamite follow up on this? MJF explained his heel turn against Cody in a fun promo segment with Chris Jericho when MJF came out to Cody's music because he's a dick. Cody then came down and beat up both MJF and Jericho, but was then attacked by a debuting Wardlow, who sided with MJF. Speaking of Jericho, and he picked up his first loss in AEW, courtesy of AEW Tag Team Champions SCU, and he lost via roll-up. 2 out of the 3 AEW Tag Team Championship matches have now ended with a roll-up, so let's hope AEW don't start using the booking crutch that has plagued Samoa Joe for so long in WWE. But Wardlow and the return of roll-up victories weren't the only big returns on the show, as after the Dark Order had beaten the Jurassic Express team of Jungle Boy and Marco Stunt, Luchasaurus made his grand return, saving Jurassic Express from Dark Order, who had offered Marco Stunt a minion creeper mask thing. Luchasaurus is my fave. And now let's move over to NXT. It was revealed on WWE Backstage this week that Johnny Gargano will not be able to compete at NXT TakeOver War Games, which was most likely going to be a match between him and Finn Balor. So how did NXT respond to this? Well, now Matt Riddle has been taken out of the War Games match and instead will be facing Balor at the TakeOver show. Can't complain about that one. And in the War Games match itself, Dominik Dijakovic has replaced Riddle, which means Team Ciampa still needs one more member. I think this is a brilliant move, and hopefully we get a lot of interplay between Dijakovic and Lee as they attempt to work together. Speaking of Keith Lee, he got a nice big win over Roderick Strong this week, which is nice considering he's been lacking in the big wins lately. A triple threat is seemingly being built for TakeOver as well, with Killian Dane, Pete Dunne, and Damian Priest all getting into a big brawl in this episode. With Dane attacking both Dunne and Priest in the past, and Dunne and Priest both having a win over each other, this should be a fun bout with enough story to keep it aloft. The big story of the show came in the main event though, where Mia Yim was facing Io Shirai for their team's War Games advantage at the pay-per-view in a ladder match. Throughout the show, the majority of the women's roster had been attacked backstage, with no one knowing who had done it. This interestingly led to the NXT debut of NXT UK Women's Champion Kaylee Ray. She made Yim take a nasty bump through a ladder to the outside and helped Shirai take the W. This surely then means that Ray will be the fourth member of Team Baszler, as Baszler came down to congratulate her team, but look out, here comes Bayley from out of nowhere to beat down Baszler. Don't forget, there's also a Survivor Series coming, Baszler. What is the real reason CM Punk returned to WWE? Press the video to the right to find out more, and the video below that to find out about a backstage fight that happened in AEW. A special thank you to our pledge hammers on Patreon, some of whom you can see scrolling below me right now. I've been Chopper Pete Cornell, and that was wrestling.